Using the Aштакаварга technique of looking where the Sun, the Moon, and Jupiter are, and to see how high their sarva points are, and also to see what they're triggering, so what planets in the sign they're going through have high points. As we did in the last video, we can use that simple principle really flexibly, and we can do a lot of things with it. We could see when somebody should start something. So if somebody wants to do something, we can find a good day for them to set that in motion. We also can look at the time something started in their lives and see how it goes. We also can even use it as a prajna time, meaning we can see the Aштакаварга at the moment that the person asks a question. And based on that time, we can just, by not even looking at the prajna chart, but just looking at the Aштакаварга going on right then and right there where they are, we can draw some really good conclusions. So it's really a great little snapshot tool to use, to use that transit of the Sun, the Moon, and Jupiter, with the Moon being most important by far, and then using the transit of the Karaka planet as well. So I'm going to show a few examples in this video where I've done that, in different ways and stuff, okay? Or haven't done that in different ways, but maybe should have in hindsight. So the first one, just to give you an idea of an event of when somebody does something, and you want to say, is it a good time for them to do this? Or should they have done it at a different time? Okay, and again, you use the same principles if you want to pick a time for a person to start something. So the first example is Barack Obama when he announced his presidency, which the data I have was, February 10th, 2007 at 11:25 a.m. So in Springfield, Illinois. So casting the transits for that, we get the Moon in Scorpio. In his chart, Scorpio gets 33 points, so it's high in the Sarva Aштакаварга. It gets 7 points in the Moon's Aштакаварга. So that's the best place for the Moon to be for him, is Moon in Scorpio. So that's very favorable. The Moon also falls in his 10th house, so it's setting that intention of power. Then it's for the Sun, it gives 5 points. Oh, sorry, it gives 4 points for the Sun. It's not super high. For a presidency, it would be nice to see higher points there. But it's a good Moon, and it has a great, it's a good sign for the Moon with 33 points, and it's great for the Moon. And the Moon is so important in a country where basically the public vote determines your win. So the Moon becomes really important. People have to have the charisma to gain the public vote. In a more traditional society, a person would have to have the, more the solar qualities to get the leadership. In a democratic society, the Moon seems to be more important than the Sun. Of course, it is a solar position, so we need to look at that. But it's a good Moon, particularly because it gives 7 points to itself. And it's actually almost the highest transit place for him is Scorpio. And the next day, it goes in the Sagittarius, which is his actually highest points. So 33 points is a great Moon. Jupiter was in Sagittarius, giving 34 points, his highest points place. Jupiter is giving 5 for the Sun. It's great for the Sun. 4 for the Moon. Good enough for the Moon. And so it's looking pretty good. Jupiter and Moon are good places, showing that based on those two planets, it was a good time for him to make that announcement. Now the Sun is over here in Aquarius, and it's not as good. The Sun's only sitting at 22 points. And the Sun gives, is giving only 2 points to its own position. It's not a very good Sun. But what you're going to find time after time as you look at this, how much weight the Moon has to carry. The Moon is just such an important planet in the Aштакаварга transit. When you want to see how good the moment is, how good a day is for starting something, in normal Muhurta, it's the Moon that's the most important thing for making an event go off well. And with Aштакаварга, it's the very same thing. The Moon is the most important most important planet to make an event go off well. So if you see the Moon really good, and if you don't see some of the other planets great, like the Sun is the Karaka, it's like the critical planet, it's not good. So Based on that, this would make this a tough prediction. Oh, did he announce that at a time that reflects him winning or not? Jupiter says so, the moon says so, the sun doesn't. So it'd be a really scary prediction to say, yeah, he's going to win because the moon's good and make up for the sun not being real good. I would never make that prediction just like that, because it's risky with that sun being down. So I would want to have, I would have definitely resorted to different techniques to try to predict this. But he did win, after all, and it shows the importance of the moon. So I'm sort of using this chart to just show how more important the moon is than the sun or the Karaka. It's really, really important. Hillary Clinton's chart shows the opposite polarity of that. So this is her announcement time, April 12, 2015 in New York at about 3:10 p.m. The time's a little debatable. So we can, we can't be sure about the Lagna. It might have been a little bit earlier. It was either Leo or Virgo. But it's just starting with the moon. The moon's in Aquarius, gives 19 points. 2 points to itself, 3 points to the sun. So the moon's not doing good for the sun or the Karaka, the sun or the moon. So she announced it in a very unfavorable time for her moon. The sun, on the other hand, was in Aries. Aries gives 34 points. It gives 6 points for the moon. So on the other hand, she had a fantastic sun in its Aштакаварга transit. Jupiter was sitting in Leo. Not bad, 32 points, 7 points for the sun. So she had a super good Jupiter, a super good sun, but a bad moon, and she didn't win. Obama had a good Jupiter, a bad sun, and a great moon, and he won the election. So it's really revealing when you see that it's always the moon that's going to be the determinative time-breaking factor. If the other things are good, then great. Like, for instance, then you'll do more. But the determinative factor is the moon. For instance, like Barack Obama, during his election, there was so much expectation. And it's been a long time since someone had so much expectations heaped upon him. But he didn't didn't make as many improvements as people would have hoped. And I think that's because of the weak sun. If he'd had a stronger sun in his Aштакаварга when he announced it, his intention, it would have shown that he would have been able to make more of a difference than he did. But as far as something good happening or something not coming together, the moon is the determinative factor. Okay, Hillary's Lagna was in Virgo, which is also great. 38 points, 5 for the sun, 6 for the moon. Everything was good but the moon. So it really shows the importance of the moon. Obama had the Lagna in Gemini. Gemini's 33 points, 5 for the sun, 5 for the moon. So he did have a good Lagna as well. I had forgotten to mention that. So one way we can do this is when we start something. So these are the times when these two people started their run for the presidency with that formal announcement. That's when they started that race. And the moon's determined more than anything else the victors or the losers of those races. So I don't have the the announcement times for the people they ran against. So I don't have the announcement time for Trump when he was running against Hillary and stuff, because those could be cool, neat things to compare. Unfortunately, I don't have that data. So you can also use it for like prajna type things. So this is the time of when somebody called me, tell me that his wife is divorcing him. He calls me up, he goes, my wife is divorcing me. It wasn't even a question, it was a statement of fact at that point in his life. I cast a chart for, the time and place, but I calculated it for his time zone. So for his location, which was in Chinook, USA. I didn't calculate it for my location. If I did it for my location, it would have been an actual prajna chart. I wanted to see what was happening in his life with respect to Aштакаварга when he asked me the question. Okay, so I'm analyzing his life. I'm not analyzing a prajna chart. I'm analyzing his life at the time he asked me a question, but since I'm analyzing his life and not the prajna chart, I have to calculate the Lagna and the moon and everything for where he's at. And the Lagna, of course, is the only thing that will change. And it's really interesting what came up. Jupiter's in Cancer. Cancer's got 30 points. It's a great sign for Jupiter. Gets 5 points in Venus, for Venus, the Karaka of marriage, and it's best for Mercury, giving 7 points. It's not great for the moon, so it's showing a lot of discomfort and pain, of course, but it's not that bad of a Jupiter. So he's not in a terrible period in his life right now. He thinks he is. He's depressed because his wife is divorcing him, and he thinks he's in a horrible place in his life right now. But then when I look at the Jupiter Aштакаварга, it doesn't look like the worst year of his life. Not like when Jupiter was in Libra, for instance. Then the Sun is in Gemini. Gemini rocks at 36 points. It's his highest sign in the chart. So here he is saying, my wife's getting me divorced, and he's having a good month, according to Aштакаварга. Venus is giving 7 points. Jupiter is getting 7 points from the Sun. But Venus, the marriage planet, is getting 7 points. Then the Moon was over here in Aries. The Moon's getting 27 points. Okay, now we have a problem. Something's not really happy here. Okay? Moon is giving 2 points to itself. So right now he's in a pretty depressing place. But as far as Venus is concerned, we still got 6 points. And the moon's not terrible. It's not like it's at 21 or 22. It's right in the average ballpark. And it gives 6 points to Venus. So all of Sun, Moon, and Jupiter are actually in nice places for Venus. Venus itself is in Aries, where Venus gets 6 points. And you're going, wait a minute. This doesn't look so bad. So what I just told him is I thought about it, and it was a statement he made. He didn't say, is she going to divorce me? He said, my wife is divorcing me. Like, there is nothing he can do about it. So with all these high points, it didn't look to me like he was in the worst period of his life, even though at that moment he felt bad thanks to, the Aries only having 2 points for the moon. But it was good for Venus. So I just told him that if he thought about it, and he thought about his marriage with his wife, and how happy he was, and how a lot of his needs weren't getting met, and how one of the needs that wasn't getting met was his sex needs, his sexual needs. His wife and him had to be about as sexually incompatible two people can be. And I know he had always been really sexually frustrated being married to her. And I also knew that she, that they had that problem. And then when I saw this Venus come up, I was like, hey, this is an opportunity here for you to actually connect to someone, find someone that you can, be a lot more fulfilled with, because Venus is getting lit up across the board here. This is not bad news for your love life. This is bad news for your marriage, but it's good news for your Venus, your love life. And he was a really devout, spiritually devout person, and he's really thinks divorce is a sin, so he was really struggling with that part. But once I talked to him about that a little bit, he felt better. A few months later, he met a girl that he was really compatible with. He was also not compatible with his wife on a philosophical level either. And then he met a girl, that he was very compatible with philosophically, and he got married again in a short time. So him calling to tell me his marriage is over was not the worst day of his life. It was really, and the Aштакаварга was showing that this is not such a bad moment right now. And that's one of the funny things that you'll see happen with Aштакаварга. Sometimes bad things will happen, things you don't want to have happen, and it'll seem like, oh my gosh, this is a terrible thing. But if the Aштакаварga points are getting lit up somehow, this terrible thing has its reward at some point. There's a time in the future where this terrible thing was what allowed you to get that terrible thing. It's a step along that way. So that's one of the really neat things you can use with this simple Aштакаварга technique. So if someone asks you a question, calculate the chart for where they're at, take the Lagna, the Karaka, the Sun and the Moon, and Jupiter for that location, and then see what's going on in their life. See if this is a bad thing. Remember, Muhurta lets us see if something is going to be productive or not productive in a person's life. If a person gets married and all the Aштакаварga points are low, it's basically saying this is not going to be a productive, happy marriage. This is not a good event. they feel like it's the best day of their life. They're sitting there toasting their friends and dancing with their new wife. And they feel like they're on top of the world and it's the best year of their life. But all the Aштакаварга points are down, and it's really not the best day of their life. It's going to be one of the shittiest days of their lives, actually, once they figure out how bad their marriage is. One of those days that they wish they hadn't woke up for. But if the Aштакаварга points are high and something bad happens or something good happens, something desirable or undesirable, it's going to end up being a good thing. So, when something happens, we label good and bad to it, or, based on desirable and undesirable things. But that's not how it works astrologically. An undesirable event, such as, your wife divorcing you, can be to lead to a wonderful future. Okay, it can be a good event. It can be a good beginning. And so this showed me that he was actually off to a pretty good beginning. Was he off to a perfect beginning? No, because this moon was here. Okay? So, as it turned out, he did find a more compatible partner. He did find a more, sexually compatible partner. But when it came to the moon itself, which is 2 points, was he really able to start his life in a way where he was truly happier? Was his attitude better? Did he learn what he needed to be happier? Not really, because of those low points for the moon. But it was a good beginning time for Venetian things in his life when he called to tell me he was getting divorced. Okay, so I'll have some more examples that will show this idea more. So this person here listed his house for sale on July 3rd, 2015. And in the evening at around a little after 5:30. Jupiter at the time, and again, this is for his town where he lives when he listed his house. Jupiter at the time was in Leo, getting a low 21 points. So this is not a good time to sell his house. Mars is just getting 2 points. So it's a terrible Jupiter transit. So it's not the right year to get his house, okay? It's not a good year for Jupiter things, money from real estate, especially with just 2 points in Mars, or anything to do with property. The moon was in Aquarius, where it got a good, healthy 30 points, and got 5 points for Mars. So the moon's actually really favorable. The sun's in Cancer, along with Karaka Mars, getting 33 points. So the Karaka of real estate is Mars. The sun is giving 5 points to himself, 5 points to the moon, 5 points to Mars. And Mars through that sign is giving 5 points. So it's great for the Karaka, it's great for the sun, it's great for the moon, it's not great for Jupiter. So he lists his house during this low points here. So the result is you won't be able to sell your house for a lot of money right now. Okay? Why do we say that? Because Jupiter's too weak. Jupiter's the money. And with 21 points, we can't expect him to get good money for his house. Everything else is nice. What actually happens is he sells his house when Jupiter goes into Scorpio. When Jupiter goes into Scorpio, it gives 4 points for Mars, the Karaka. So in Leo, he had 2 points, and he had 2 points in Virgo, 1 point in Libra, and finally gets on to Scorpio, where it has a decent points, finally, for the first time. Gives 4 points. Shortly after Jupiter goes into Scorpio, he sells his house. Jupiter's only 27 points, but he sells his house for as much as he could have. And that was thanks to him listing it when the moon was good, and the sun was good, and Mars was really good. All three of those were great in Aштакаварга. But the drag was Jupiter. And so because of that Jupiter, it wasn't a good time to sell then. He had to wait a while before he could sell it. And before that, he had, really low offers, really the ridiculously low offers that he resisted. And it took him a long time to sell the house. But he finally did, and it all worked out well. Okay, so, the Lagna was in Scorpio, 4 points for Mars, 27 points average. Not the greatest Lagna, but not too terrible. But the moon was really good, sun was really good, Jupiter was the problem here. So, the Jupiter is not going to make or break the time you start something. But if you start something when Jupiter's in a bad Aштакаварга points, you're not going to get the most of it until Jupiter goes into a good sign. So that doesn't mean don't do something when Jupiter's in low points. So many things we don't get to choose the year. It just means don't expect the most from it until Jupiter goes into a high point sign where it's triggering off the Karaka and the Sun and the Moon that you're interested in. So see, when it went to Scorpio, you got 4 for Mars, 5 for the Moon, 4 for the Sun. That was like the best Jupiter for Sun, Moon, and Mars that he's had. And so as a result of, he feels so much better in his life, he feels a lot less pressure, he feels like he's in charge of his life again because he got out from under that house. And, you know, he's very much getting his Sun, Moon, Mars points right now. And of course, it's reducing a lot of stress on his marriage life, and so it's helping him with his 6 and his Venus now too. So it's all been a good thing for many parts of his life. Okay, so again, the Moon always comes through. The Moon is always the definitive thing in these charts. And I think the reason that is because the Moon is the planet that's all about growing. Moon is always about the cycles of growing and increasing. Is the Moon in a good place where it can grow you something nicely? So the Moon seems to always be the deciding factor. Okay, this is a chart of someone who lost their turtle. Okay, so this is an event. They lost their pet turtle. And this turtle was really important to them because they had gotten it. Their daughter had a friend who had this turtle that they totally did not take care of. And the turtle was just calcium deficient and just dying in front of them. So she just walked over there one time and just literally stole the turtle. She just brought that turtle home and took care of that turtle for years, nourished it back to health. The turtle would hibernate in her basement every winter and then come out in the spring. So she had this, several year-long relationship with this turtle that she had saved, basically. So when that turtle went missing, it was very upsetting. So the Moon was in Pisces. We got 26 points. Not great. For the Moon itself, which is her, it's 3 points. It's low. The worst thing is Saturn, which is animals, gets 1 point only in Pisces. So the Moon is saying, no, I'm not good for animals in this sign of Pisces. So this is showing, oh, that really reduces the chance of her ever getting that turtle back. Okay? Finding that turtle. Then the Moon's bad also for Mars, which is her home. It's bad for Moon, which is just how she feels. She just felt so much pain from that. And of course, bad for the animal. Because where she lived was a place where the animal was not going to be able to survive outside. It was just not going to make it through the winters where they lived. It had to be in her house in the basement to survive. Okay, then the Jupiter and Sun were in Virgo. 27 points, not great. Not terrible. Unfortunately, terrible for animals because that's where Saturn just gets 1 point again, which is animals. So while the transits through those 2 places are not the terrible transit, they're not the super low points, they're really bad places for animals. Okay? Jupiter, we already covered Jupiter. Saturn was in Scorpio, where he gets 2 points to himself. Not great for Saturn transit either. And Saturn through Scorpio only gets 1 point from the Moon, or the Moon only gets 1 point there, so it's really hurting the Moon. And so, again, that's her relationship and the things that she feels close to, of course. So there's nothing good in this chart. Okay, and again, I cast this chart for where she lived, which was across the street from me, sort of. This was one of my neighbors. And the ascendant was Scorpio 2. Again, Scorpio's bad for pets with just 2 points. Result is, this is a really bad thing for you and your pet. I don't like the Moon's not giving me lots of points. The the Saturn's not getting a lot of points. We got too many 1s on Saturn, and the best thing we got with Saturn, some 2s. And so this is a really bad event for the pet, or for your pet. Result is, pet never came home. Okay? Jupiter over and Sun in Virgo, okay, we already covered that. So basically, this chart showed pretty clearly that that pet was not going to be coming home, sadly. Okay? So again, you can use it on a prajna. See what's really happening in a person's life. This event that you're asking about. And of course, she asked about it. Not this, the lagna when the pet went missing was different than this lagna, but the other planets were in the same position. You can calculate the chart for when they ask you. It's even better if you calculate the chart for when, when they notice the thing is missing, because that's when the event happens to them. Oh no, my turtle's gone. So this was within an hour or two of the turtle being gone. By the time I heard about it. So the moon was in the same sign, the sun was in the same sign, Jupiter was in the same sign, and so on. Saturn was in the same sign. None of that was going to change. So you're basically looking at what this event is. Is this a really bad event? That means it's going to continue to go south. If it's a good event that happened there and all the points are low, this good event is not going to be such a good event. So when your friend says, oh, I met this great guy, and you punch up her Aштакаварга, and all the Aштакаварga points suck, you're going to say, actually, this is not going to end up being a great thing for you. This is going to be a horrid experience in the long run. Because that's what those points are showing. Is this a good or bad thing? It doesn't show you, is this something you want or don't want? Everyone loves meeting a great guy or a great girl on a day. Everyone loves meeting a new person, right? But meeting a new person is not always a good thing. Okay? So whether it's a desirable or undesirable event, Aштакаварга points show if it's going to be a favorable event that's productive and towards your well-being in your life, or if this thing that just happened is not going to be that great. So it's a really simple, effective way to deal with tons of things that clients may ask you without even having to look at dashas or anything. Just look at what's happening with Aштакаварга and evaluate it. Okay, this is a chart for when a girl had her first date with someone. She didn't recall the meeting date where she actually met this person, started communicating with this person. But she, this was the first day she actually saw the person in the flesh, had a date with this new guy. So, is this a good date? Is this date going to lead to good things or bad things? Let's find out. The moon and the ascendant at the time were in Leo. Leo is only 26 points. We don't want less than 28 points if we can help it for the moon. It only gives 2 points for the moon, which is her well-being. The moon is always your general well-being. So based on this, we're going to say, no, this guy is not going to be good for your general well-being. Now, Jupiter gives 5 points, or the moon gives 5 points through, Leo, where Jupiter is. So Jupiter is given 5 points in Leo, and the moon is timing and awakening those 5 points. So this is good. This is showing that the person has some good qualities. The guy, Jupiter, has some good qualities. But it's only going 4 points for Venus. So it's not like this is a great thing for marriage or marriage possibilities or long-term dating material. So the moon's really not in favor of this being a great moment in her life, even though she was excited about it, as they always are. Jupiter was in Cancer, where it got only 24 points. Not good at all. And only 1 point towards the moon. So this person is not having a year where wonderful things are going to be happening to her. Or wonderfully long-lived, happy things are going to be happening to her. It's not looking very pretty. Then Venus has got 5 points. Okay, so somehow this Jupiter transit is good for marriage somehow. Okay, but it's still not good. It's only 24 points. Somehow it's good for Venetian things. Let's see what's going on with the Sun. The Sun in Capricorn, this is why I picked this chart. Okay, Sun in Capricorn, or one reason, gets 26 points. Not great for the Sun. It's good, decent for Venus, decent for Jupiter, decent for Moon, decent for Sun. But it's just 2 low points. It's not great. Not only that, it's also the Sankranti. The first 3 degrees of the Sun in Capricorn, or the last 3 degrees of the Sun in Sag, or the first 3 degrees of the Sun in Gemini, and the first 4 degrees of the Sun in Cancer, those are called the Sankranti ingresses, the Sankrantis, where the Sun is going from north to south. It's changing its motion. So here it just started moving north half a day before. And you don't want to do, nothing that you do in those 3 days of it moving north or south for that 3-day period can you expect to be a lasting thing. It's never good for long-term things. And the sun's not good in the Aштакаварга either. So nothing good at all. Let's see the Karaka of Venus. Venus was in Capricorn too. Only mediocre. 4 points for Venus, 4 points for the moon. But you start seeing the picture of that this meeting this person is not going to be good for her insofar as her general well-being is concerned with the moon. It's not really supporting most things. So I think I already covered the points here. The only nice points that were remotely decent was there was a 6 points here of, okay, Jupiter was giving 5 points to Cancer in his transit, and that was the best thing. So Venus got a little help. So the short relationship she had with this person just helped her affirm the idea that she wanted to get married one day, and she tried to behave in a way that was more conducive to marriage. But there was just nothing good at this first meeting point. The moon was too bad. The moon was bad in transit in Leo with 26 points, only giving 2 to the moon. And 4 to Venus is really average. It's not wonderful because Venus regularly gets more points. 4 is the average of all the planets. Mars and Saturn, which give very few points, 4 is really good for them. But Venus, which gives a lot of points, 4 is not really a good enough thing. You really want to see 5, 6, 7, 8s for Venuses. So based on this first meeting date, we could pretty clearly see, yeah, this is not going to be the wonderful first date that you thought it was going to be. This is going to create a lot of unhappiness for you. And that usually means it's not going to be grow and productive. And it wasn't. A couple years later, the person calls, or emails, I guess, about a job interview. The job interview took place November 21st, and at around 11:51, and the moon was in Aries, where it gets 35 points. That's wonderful. The moon has got 6 points in Aries for itself, so this is a really good job for her. It's got 8 points with Jupiter. It's really good for her finances. It gives 6 points with Venus. It's even good for her social life. This is a really fantastic moon. Can't really beat it. It's her best sign. So based on the moon, we're going to say, yeah, this is going to be the best job possible for you. But let's look at the rest. Jupiter was in Virgo, 29 points. It was decent. It gives 5 points to the moon, 5 points to the sun. The sun is the career, the moon is her well-being. It's good for her career, it's good for her well-being. The moon in Aries was 6 points for her moon, 4 points for her sun. 4 is good for the sun because the sun's not the highest, doesn't give it so many points as some of the other planets. So sun was in, decent enough place, 29 points. It's 1 point above average. Most importantly, it's good for the sun, the Karaka. It's good for the moon herself. And it's okay for finances, Jupiter. It's a good enough sun. Jupiter, I think we're on too. Jupiter also got 29 points. It's good enough. Okay. It's a little low on Jupiter, but it shows that financially things can get better once Jupiter goes into Libra, which it actually did for her. She got a raise when Jupiter was in Libra, where it got 32 points. The Lagna at the time was in Aquarius. 27 points, not terrible. Gives 3 to the sun, 4 to everything else. It's good enough. So the moon carries it as always, her best moon sign. Really good for the moon, her own personal well-being. Good long-term for her finances with 8 points on Jupiter. She gets the job, and to now, it's been 2 years. She still works there. This is a person who before that never held a job more than a few months. Only held like short-term jobs. And so this job, landed them their, real job, their career job that they're still working. So, and we can see that thanks to this really nice moon transit, that this ended up being a really great interview, a beginning point again. So you can be really flexible in using these points. If you understand what's happening, and that is that we're looking to see, is this a favorable moment for you. A favorable moment is a moment where whatever happens to you, whatever you initiate, that's a moment, that's a beginning. And that beginning will take you places that, are good for your well-being and good for certain things in your life that allow your well-being to flourish and allow certain things in your life to flourish. Or it's a beginning point of something not flourishing, of something, getting more stressful and more of a struggle. And we can simply see that with the Aштакаварга points of what's being triggered. You can use it for when you purposefully plan something. Say you want to go on a trip to another state. Go and there when you got good Aштакаварга, so that going to that state ends up being a productive experience over the long term. Or if the day you get married, the day you join a dating service, the day you start a new job, the day even you start studying astrology. Although that's too late because you're already studying, right? Or you can look back to study something in your life. Say you've got a relationship or you've got a job that you're really struggling with and you don't know, is it just that thing or is there something wrong with you that you're not making it work? Well, just look at the Aштакаварга points of when you started that thing, when you met that person or when you married that person or when you started that job, and go, aha, that's why it's only going this good. And realize that that's sort of what's available to that thing that you started then. And if you want something different, you're going to have to reset the clock. You're going to have to start it over in another time. Just get a new job at another time. Maybe try to, do some kind of extra ceremony in marriage. Do something to sort of reset the clock at a more auspicious time so it can work better for you. And if you, whatever changes you make sure you start them when the Aштакаварга points are favorable so that you start something that over the long haul is going to be productive. Sometimes things start and they start in a really haphazardous way. You're like, oh my gosh, there's no way this could be a good thing. But if the Aштакаварga points are showing nice, you'd be surprised how it could come along in time, and you might be surprised by how it works out. Okay? And then even like I said, if a prajna is confusing you and you can't read the prajna chart, just read the Aштакаварga points for that person right then and there, for where they're at that time. And even better yet is if you can find out when the thing they ask about came into their life, and then find the Aштакаварga points of that and work with that. So it can be really revealing, and it really is so much easier than using normal Muhurta techniques, which you have to look at so many things. It's overwhelming, and it's easier than looking at prajnas too with your normal prajna techniques. And you don't have to really, you just work with Aштакаварga. So the best way to proceed with this technique is think of some important things in your life that you know the starting date of. Maybe you don't know the date, but the time, but you know the date at least. And you don't even need to know the exact day, as long as you have the moon in the right sign, which means 2.5 day period. Find that date, cast a chart, put it into your software here, and see where those planets are in your Aштакаварga, and you'll be able to make a lot of sense really easy. It'll explain a lot of the things you have in your life and why they're only what they are, or why they're a lot better than you thought. Think of the things that you started that you thought would be hopeless that ended up turning out to be the best things in your life, and look at those start times. Then you'll get a really good feel of what these Aштакаварga points are capable of doing. And then when any son asks you anything, you can use this technique. It doesn't matter what they ask you about. If you just look at the right planets, find the right time to look at them for, the right start time and so on, then you can really make some really easy, clean predictions. Okay, enough on that. We'll move forward with other techniques. Thank you.